A billionaire with a cruel streak, a waitress with an unbreakable spirit, and a restaurant holding a secret that will change everything. In the world of the super-rich, some believe their money gives them the right to treat others as less than human. They're about to find out how wrong they are. When a powerful tech mogul decides to make a young waitress her personal verbal punching bag for the evening, she has no idea that her target is not who she seems, and that the quiet woman watching from the corner booth holds the power to shatter her entire world with a single sentence. This isn't just a story about service. It's a story about survival, hidden strength, and the moment justice is finally served. The starched white apron felt heavier than usual on Maya's shoulders. It was a Friday night at Aurelia, one of Manhattan's most exclusive dining establishments, and the air itself seemed to crackle with the energy of money and power. The low ambient lighting glinted off diamond bracelets and $1,000 watches. The gentle hum was a symphony of hushed, important conversations, the clinking of delicate Riedel crystal, and the distant, controlled chaos of the kitchen. For Maya, this was both the stage for her survival and the cage that held her dreams captive. Every shift was a performance. She wasn't just Maya Collins, a 24-year-old, juggling 2 jobs and night classes for a business degree. Here she was, an extension of Aurelia's brand, poised, knowledgeable, and gracefully invisible until needed. Her smile was part of the uniform, a carefully constructed shield that betrayed none of the exhaustion seeping into her bones. The rent on her tiny Brooklyn apartment was due. Her textbooks for advanced accounting were ridiculously expensive, and her beat-up 2008 Honda Civic was making a noise that sounded suspiciously like a death rattle. But here, amidst the scent of truffle oil and seared scallops, her personal problems had to be checked at the door, along with the winter coats of the clientele. Maya moved with an economy of motion honed by years in the service industry. She refilled a water glass without interrupting a conversation, cleared plates with a silent efficiency, and described the pan-seared branzino with a passion that almost made her believe she could afford it herself. She was good at her job, not just competent, but exceptional. She remembered regulars' names, their favorite tables, the way Mr. Albright liked his old-fashioned, with a single large ice cube, and how Mrs. Davies, a sweet elderly woman who dined alone every other Friday, preferred her tea with honey and a slice of lemon on the side, never in the cup. It was these small connections that made the grueling hours bearable. Mrs. Davies was already seated at her usual corner table, her kind, wrinkled eyes lighting up when she saw Maya approaching. "Maya, my dear," she said, her voice a soft, comforting whisper. "I was hoping I'd get you tonight." "It's always a pleasure, Mrs. Davies," Maya replied, her smile genuine for the first time that evening. "The usual to start. You know me too well, and please tell Chef Antoine his bouillabaisse last time was a little piece of heaven. I'll be sure to pass along the compliment." This was the part of the job she loved, the quiet dignity, the mutual respect. It was a fleeting reminder that her service was an act of care, not subservience. She treated her section like a small temporary community she was tasked with nurturing for a few hours. It was this ethos, this dedication to creating a perfect experience that fueled her ultimate dream, a small, cozy cafe of her own. She called it the Sunrise Brew in her daydreams. It would be a place with warm lighting, mismatched comfortable chairs, the smell of freshly baked bread and coffee that was both excellent and affordable. A place where a person's worth wasn't measured by the brand of their watch. She had a detailed business plan saved on her laptop, a document she poured her heart and soul into during the precious few hours between her shift at Aurelia and her early morning opening shift at a downtown coffee bar. Her manager, Mr. Harrison, A man whose spine seemed to be made of jelly scurried past his face, tight with anxiety. "Table 7 is arriving, Maya. The Croft party. Be on your toes. I want flawless service." Flawless. Maya's stomach tightened. The Croft party. That meant Isabella Croft. The name alone was enough to make the most seasoned staff members nervous. Croft was new money tech money, a wunderkind CEO who had launched a social media app that had gone supernova. She was barely 30, relentlessly profiled in business magazines, and had earned a reputation in the service industry as a nightmare. She was known for her impossibly high standards, her hair-trigger temper, and a cruel, condescending attitude that seemed to be her favorite pastime. Maya took a deep, steadying breath, smoothing the front of her apron. It was just another table, another set of challenges. She could handle it. She had to. She pasted on her professional smile, picked up 4 leather-bound menus, and turned toward the entrance. Flawless service. That was the goal. She had no idea that tonight, flawless wouldn't be nearly enough. The weight on her shoulders was about to become unbearable. The entrance of Isabella Croft and her entourage was not a quiet affair. It was an announcement. They didn't walk into Aurelia. They descended upon it. The ambient hum of the dining room faltered for a beat as heads turned. Isabella stood framed in the doorway, a vision of sharp, expensive angles. She wore a tailored black dress that likely cost more than Maya's car, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, glossy ponytail that seemed to accentuate the permanent sneer on her lips. Flanking her were 2 men in designer suits who radiated the smug confidence of those who ride on the coattails of power, and a woman with an unnervingly blank, Botoxed expression. "Isabella Croft party of 4, she announced to the hostess not as a statement, but as a proclamation. Her voice was crisp and loud, slicing through the restaurant's carefully curated atmosphere. The hostess, a young woman named Chloe, paled slightly. "Of course, Ms. Croft. Right this way." Mr. Harrison materialized at Chloe's side, his smile wide and sycophantic. "Ms. Croft, a pleasure to have you back at Aurelia. Your favorite table is ready." Isabella scanned the room with a dismissive air, her eyes sweeping over the other patrons, as if they were merely part of the decor. Her gaze landed on Maya, who was standing perfectly still, menus in hand, waiting to approach. For a fraction of a second, Isabella's eyes narrowed a flicker of cold assessment in their depths before she turned her attention back to the manager. "See that it is Harrison," she said, her tone leaving no room for error. They were seated in Maya's section, at the best table in the house, a plush semicircular booth that offered a panoramic view of the dining room. Maya waited the prescribed 90 seconds before approaching a perfect balance of attentive but not pushy. "Good evening," she began, her voice calm and even. "My name is Maya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I start you with some water for the table? We have still or our signature, sparkling from the Italian Alps." Isabella didn't even look at her. She was scrolling through her phone, her thumb moving with sharp, aggressive flicks. One of the men, a slick-haired man named Julian, answered for her. "Sparkling. And we'll need the wine list. Bring the sommelier over." "Of course," Maya said, with a nod already turning to retrieve the water. And girl Isabella's voice cut through the air, sharp as broken glass. Maya stopped, turning back. Isabella's eyes were still glued to her phone. "Don't be slow about it. The first jab." Maya felt it land a small, sharp sting. She kept her expression neutral, gave another slight nod, and walked away. This was the game. She knew the rules. Show no weakness, give no reaction, be a perfect smiling machine. When she returned with the water and 4 glasses on a tray, the sommelier, a distinguished Frenchman named Jean-Luc, was already at the table. He was patiently explaining the virtues of a 2012 Bordeaux when Isabella cut him off. "Just bring the Chateau Margaux, the Héron 9. She finally looked up from her phone, her gaze sweeping over the table before landing on Maya, who was carefully pouring the sparkling water. "And you. Try not to spill that. This dress is bespoke." The comment was unnecessary, designed to diminish. Maya's hand didn't waver. She filled each glass to the perfect level, the bubbles fizzing softly. "Would you care to hear our specials for this evening?" she asked, her voice as smooth as cream. Isabella let out a short, humorless laugh. "As if you'd know how to pronounce them properly. Just leave the menus and disappear for a while. Your hovering is distracting." Her friends snickered. The woman, whose name was Tiffany, looked at Maya with an expression of mild disgust, as if she were an insect that had crawled too close. The atmosphere at the table was toxic, a little bubble of arrogance and disdain in the otherwise elegant room. Maya placed the menus on the table and retreated her back straight, her steps measured, but inside a cold knot was tightening in her stomach. This was going to be a long night. She could feel the storm brewing. Isabella Croft wasn't just a difficult customer. She was a predator, and for some reason she had chosen Maya as her prey for the evening. From her station, she watched as Isabella gestured expansively, her voice rising in volume, complaining about the lighting, the music, the placement of the forks. Each complaint was a performance, a demonstration of her power. And Maya knew with a sinking certainty that the main act was yet to come. The appetizer course was a minefield. Isabella had ordered the foie gras terrine, and the moment Maya placed the plate before her, she recoiled with theatrical disgust. "What is this?" she demanded, poking at the delicate arrangement with her fork. "That is the foie gras terrine, with fig jam and toasted brioche." Ms. Croft, Maya explained calmly, though her heart rate had begun to quicken. "It looks pathetic," Isabella declared to her friends, who murmured in agreement. "The brioche points are uneven. Did a child toast these? And the jam, it's smeared. It's supposed to be a quenelle." She pushed the plate an inch away from her. "Take it back. Tell your chef my compliments on his new career in abstract art, but I'd prefer to eat actual food." Maya maintained her composure. "I do apologize, Miss Croft. I will have a new one brought out for you immediately." She removed the plate, her hand steady, despite the tremor of anger running through her. In the kitchen, Chef Antoine, a burly man with a fiery temper and a heart of gold, looked at the returned plate with fury. Uneven brioche quenelle, he roared, his French accent thickening. "She knows nothing. This is textbook perfect." He grabbed a new plate and began to replate the dish with furious precision, muttering curses under his breath. This woman, she thinks because she has money, she has taste. She has nothing. Maya weighted her back to the kitchen's fury, taking a moment to recenter herself. She had dealt with picky customers before, but this was different. This wasn't about the food. It was a power play. It was about humiliation. The second attempt was met with a sigh of exaggerated boredom from Isabella. "Fine. This will have to do, I suppose. It's amazing what one has to put up with." The main course was even worse. Julian had ordered the Wagyu steak medium rare. Maya delivered it, and he sliced into the center, nodding in approval. But Isabella wasn't finished. Let me see that she commanded, leaning over. She stared at the pink center of the steak. "That's not medium rare. It's medium. There's no warmth in that red." "Are your chefs colorblind?" "Sir, is the steak to your liking?" Maya asked Julian, directly trying to circumvent Isabella. Before he could answer, Isabella scoffed. "It doesn't matter if he likes it. I'm paying the bill and I say it's wrong. Take it back." Maya stood her ground just for a second. "Sir," she repeated, looking at Julian. Julian, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to cross his benefactor, just shrugged. Yeah, maybe just a little more rare. Defeated. Maya picked up the plate. As she turned, Isabella subtly shifted her leg, catching Maya's foot. It was a small, almost imperceptible movement, but it was enough. Maya stumbled, catching her balance just in time to prevent a fall, but the heavy ceramic plate tilted. A small amount of the red wine reduction sauce dripped from the edge of the plate landing, directly on the sleeve of Isabella's pristine white silk blouse. A collective gasp went through the table. "You clumsy idiot!" Isabella shrieked, jumping to her feet. The entire dining room went silent. Everyone turned to look. "Look what you've done. This is a $5,000 blouse. Are you completely incompetent?" Maya's face burned with humiliation. She knew it had been intentional. The subtle trip, the perfect positioning. It was a setup. "Ms. Croft, I am so terribly sorry," she stammered, grabbing a clean napkin from her apron. "Let me help you." "Don't you dare touch me." Isabella slapped her hand away. "Get your manager. Get him. Now. I want this clumsy little waitress fired." Mr. Harrison came running, his face a mask of panic. He saw the stain, he saw Isabella's furious face, and he immediately turned on Maya. "What happened?" He hissed, his voice trembling. "She tripped. Like a bumbling fool, she tripped and ruined my blouse," Isabella accused, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at Maya. "I am so sorry, Miss Croft, so deeply sorry, Mr. Harrison," babbled, bowing and scraping. "This is inexcusable. We will of course cover the full dry cleaning costs. Your entire meal will be complimentary. Everything." He turned to Maya, his eyes cold and unforgiving. "Apologize to Miss Croft immediately." Every fiber of Maya's being screamed in protest. Apologize for being tripped, for being the target of a cruel game. But she saw the desperation in her manager's eyes and the sea of watching faces. Her job, her rent, her future, it all hung in the balance. Swallowing her pride, which felt like swallowing shards of glass, she faced Isabella. "Miss Croft, I apologize. It was a terrible accident, and I am truly sorry for my clumsiness." Isabella smirked, a cruel, triumphant gleam in her eyes. She had won. She had successfully manufactured a scene, established her dominance, and forced Maya to kneel, figuratively speaking. "Sorry doesn't fix a ruined blouse from the new Chanel collection," she said, dabbing at the stain with a napkin. "But since your manager is comping the meal, I'll be generous. You can keep your miserable job. For now." She sat back down, basking in the attention. "Now get that steak remade, and bring us another bottle of the Margot." My nerves are shot. As Maya walked back to the kitchen, her body shaking, she felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. Some held pity, others contempt. She felt small, powerless, and utterly alone. In the corner of the room, she noticed Mrs. Davies looking at her with deep concern. And at another table, a woman she hadn't paid much attention to, before a distinguished woman with silver-streaked dark hair and an air of quiet authority, was watching the entire scene with an unreadable, intense expression. But Maya was too consumed by her own humiliation to give it a second thought. The rest of the meal was a slow, agonizing torture. Isabella dissected every dish, every action with surgical cruelty. She complained that the new steak was now too rare. She sent back her dessert, a delicate chocolate lava cake, claiming it was undercooked, then complained the replacement was overcooked. Each complaint was delivered with a fresh insult aimed at Maya. You'd think for the prices here they could afford to hire competent staff. Do you have any ambition at all, or is this it for you? I have shoes that are older and smarter than you. Her friends laughed along their sycophantic chorus, amplifying every blow. Maya moved like an automaton, her face a blank mask, her emotions locked down tight. She focused on the mechanics of her job, clearing plates, refilling glasses, folding napkins. She was a ghost at the table, a function, not a person. Inside, however, a storm of fury and despair was raging. Each word was a tiny cut, and she was bleeding pride. Finally, the ordeal was almost over. They had finished their coffee and were preparing to leave. Mr. Harrison had already informed them multiple times that the entire check, which would have been well over $2,000, had been taken care of. Maya approached the table one last time. "Will there be anything else for you this evening?" she asked, her voice a strained whisper. Isabella looked up, a final venomous glint in her eyes. She wanted one last shot, one final crushing blow to complete her victory. She leaned back in her chair, appraising Maya from head to toe with a look of utter contempt. "No, I think we're done here," she said slowly, her voice dripping with condescension. She looked around at her friends, then back at Maya, ensuring she had everyone's full attention for her grand finale. You know, she began a faux philosophical tone to her voice. "I was just thinking about the natural order of things. There are people in this world who create, who build, who innovate. People like me." She gestured to herself. "And then there are people like you." Maya stood frozen, her blood turning to ice. "You exist to serve us." Isabella continued, her voice growing colder. "You wake up, put on that sad little uniform with its pathetic little stains, and you spend your life fetching things for your betters. It's a necessary function, I suppose. A reminder that for every winner, there has to be a loser. People like you are destined to serve people like me. You will never ever amount to anything more than this stained apron and a handful of pity tips." It was the final devastating blow. It wasn't just an insult about her job. It was a judgment on her entire existence. It struck at the very core of her hopes, her dreams of the sunrise brew, her grueling hours spent studying her belief that hard work could lift her out of her circumstances. Isabella wasn't just being cruel. She was trying to extinguish the tiny flame of hope that kept Maya going. Something inside Maya snapped. The carefully constructed dam of professionalism she had built all night crumbled. Tears, hot and shameful, welled in her eyes, blurring the smug face in front of her. Her hands, hidden in the pockets of her apron, trembled uncontrollably. She opened her mouth to say something, anything to defend herself, to scream, to quit. But only a choked sob escaped. The entire dining room, which had been trying to ignore the drama, was now staring openly. The silence was thick and heavy with judgment and discomfort. Isabella smiled, a thin, cruel slash of a smile. This was the reaction she had wanted. The complete and utter breakdown of her victim. "Oh, look," she said to her friends. "It's crying. How pathetic." She reached for her purse. "Harrison," she called out, "I've changed my mind. I don't want her working here anymore. Fire her. I want to see you fire her right now." Mr. Harrison, who had been hovering nearby, started to scurry over his face, ashen. Maya's world was collapsing. This was it. Fired, humiliated, broken. But just as Mr. Harrison reached the table, a calm, clear voice cut through the tense silence. "That will not be necessary." The voice was not loud, but it carried an undeniable weight of authority that made everyone, including Isabella Croft, turn to its source. A woman was rising from a discreet table in the back corner. It was the woman with the silver-streaked hair Maya had noticed earlier. She was impeccably dressed in a simple but elegant grey pantsuit, and she moved with a grace and confidence that instantly commanded the room. She walked slowly, deliberately toward table 7. Her eyes, a piercing shade of blue, were fixed not on Maya, but directly on Isabella Croft. The triumphant smirk on Isabella's face began to falter, replaced by a flicker of confusion and annoyance. "And who are you?" Isabella demanded, irritated by the interruption. The manager's boss. Don't worry, he's about to be on my good side. The woman stopped beside Maya, placing a gentle, reassuring hand on her shoulder. The simple gesture was a lifeline, and Maya gripped onto it, trying to stifle her sobs. The woman looked Isabella Croft straight in the eye, her expression unyielding. "No," she said, her voice as cool and sharp as ice. "I'm not the manager's boss." She paused, letting the tension build. "I'm the woman who owns this restaurant, and you, Miss Croft, have just made a very, very big mistake." The silence in Aurelia was now absolute, a thick, breathless vacuum. Every diner, every staff member was frozen, their attention riveted on the confrontation unfolding at table 7. Isabella Croft's arrogant smirk had completely vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. You own this place," she stammered, her voice a full octave higher than before. She looked the woman up and down, searching for a sign of a lie, but found only unshakable confidence. "I do," the woman confirmed. "My name is Catherine Blackwood. I own the Blackwood Hospitality Group. Aurelia is one of ours." A wave of recognition and fear washed over Isabella's face. The Blackwood Hospitality Group wasn't just a restaurant chain. It was an empire of luxury hotels, resorts, and 5-star dining establishments across the globe. And Catherine Blackwood, while notoriously private and rarely photographed, was a legend in the business world, a self-made billionaire known for her sharp intellect, her philanthropy, and her utter intolerance for arrogance and incompetence. She was old money legacy power, a titan of industry compared to Isabella's flashy, volatile new wealth. Catherine's gaze was like a physical force, pinning Isabella to her seat. "I was having a quiet dinner this evening, Miss Croft. I make it a habit to visit my establishments unannounced. It's the best way to get an honest assessment of the service. And tonight, I have seen the most unprofessional, cruel, and disgusting display of behavior I have ever witnessed in one of my dining rooms." She turned her sharp blue eyes to Isabella's friends, who were now trying to shrink into the upholstery of the booth. "And you," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "are complicit in your silence and your sycophantic laughter. You should be ashamed of yourselves." She then looked at the trembling Mr. Harrison. "As for you, Mr. Harrison, we'll get to you in a moment." Her attention returned to Isabella, who was now pale and visibly shaken. The power dynamic had shifted so violently, it was like a tectonic event. "But what I find most offensive," Catherine continued, her voice lowering into a dangerously quiet tone, "is your attack on this young woman." She squeezed Maya's shoulder gently. "You sit here in your $5,000 blouse, and you presume to know a single thing about her life, her ambition, or her worth." Isabella tried to recover, to puff up her chest. She was incompetent. She spilled wine on me. "I saw what happened." Catherine cut her off sharply. "I saw you trip her. I saw every calculated insult, every petty power play you've engaged in for the last 2 hours. You weren't critiquing service. You were indulging in bullying for sport." Catherine took a step closer. "You talk about the natural order of things. Let me tell you about the natural order of things. This young woman, Maya Collins, is worth 10 of you." Isabella scoffed a desperate, hollow sound. "She's a waitress." "She is," Catherine agreed. "And she is also a full-time business student who maintains a 4.0 GPA. She works 2 jobs over 70 hours a week to pay for her education and to support herself because she has no family to fall back on. She does all of this with more grace, dignity, and resilience than you have displayed in a single moment of your life." Catherine paused, letting her words sink in. The revelation that stunned the room was yet to come. "But that's not all," she said, her eyes boring into Isabella's. You see, I know all of this because I've made it my business to know. Maya Collins is the first ever recipient of the Blackwood Aspire Scholarship. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. The Blackwood Aspire Scholarship was a prestigious and highly competitive grant Catherine had established years ago. It wasn't just about money. It was a full mentorship program designed to find and nurture brilliant, underprivileged individuals with entrepreneurial spirit. It was famously anonymous. The benefactor was never revealed to the recipients until they were ready to launch their ventures. I founded that scholarship to find people with true grit, Catherine explained, her voice ringing with passion. Not people who get lucky with a silly phone app, but people who have stared into the abyss of failure and hardship and refused to back down. I have been reading Maya's monthly progress reports for 2 years. I have read her business plan, a plan for a community-focused cafe that is one of the most well-researched and compassionate proposals I have ever seen. I was dining here tonight, Ms. Croft, specifically, to observe her in a real-world environment to see how she handled pressure before I made my final decision. Catherine looked at Maya, and for the first time, her stern expression softened into one of genuine warmth and pride. And I have seen everything I need to see. She turned back to a now speechless Isabella. You asked her if this was all she would ever amount to. You judged her by her apron. You were wrong. This apron is temporary. Her character, however, is permanent. And so Ms. Croft is the character you've shown me tonight. The finality in her voice was absolute. The billionaire had been stripped bare, her cruelty exposed, and her power rendered utterly meaningless. The waitress she had tried so desperately to break was, in fact, the protégée of the one woman in the city she should never have crossed. The aftermath of Catherine Blackwood's revelation was swift and brutal. The air in Aurelia, once thick with tension, now crackled with the electric hum of consequence. Catherine's gaze, like a surgeon's scalpel, moved from Isabella to Mr. Harrison. The manager was sweating profusely, his face a ghastly shade of pale. He looked as if he was about to faint. Mr. Harrison, Catherine said, her voice devoid of any warmth. An owner puts their trust in a manager to be their eyes and ears to uphold the standards of the establishment, and most importantly, to protect the staff, who are the very backbone of that establishment. Tonight, you saw a member of your team being systematically abused and harassed by a patron. And what did you do? Harrison opened his mouth, but no sound came out. You did nothing, Catherine answered for him. Worse than nothing. You sided with the abuser. You offered them rewards for their despicable behavior. You pressured your employee to apologize for being assaulted. You have demonstrated a complete lack of integrity, leadership, and basic human decency. You are a coward. Pack your things. You are no longer employed by the Blackwood Hospitality Group. The words landed like hammer blows. Harrison visibly deflated his shoulders, slumping in utter defeat. Without a word, he turned and walked zombie-like toward his office, his career at Aurelia finished. Catherine then turned her attention back to Isabella Croft, who was desperately trying to salvage the situation. Look, Miss Blackwood. Isabella began, her voice now pleading and sycophantic, a grotesque parody of her earlier arrogance. There's been a misunderstanding. I was just having a bad day. I'm a huge admirer of your work. Catherine held up a hand, silencing her instantly. Save it, Miss Croft. I am not interested in your excuses. I am, however, interested in consequences. The tech world is smaller than you think. I happen to sit on the advisory board of 2 of the largest venture capital firms that have a significant stake in your company. I assure you they will be very interested to hear about how their star CEO conducts herself in public. Brand image is a fragile thing, An image of a cruel, unstable bully isn't exactly good for shareholder confidence. The threat was clear, precise, and devastating. Isabella's company, her wealth, her entire public persona, it was all built on perception. Catherine Blackwood had the power to shatter that perception with a few phone calls. The blood drained from Isabella's face as the reality of her situation sank in. She had picked a fight with a waitress and ended up in a war with an empress. Now Catherine said, her voice dropping to a near whisper that was more menacing than any shout. "I believe your complimentary meal is over. I suggest you and your silent, spineless friends leave my restaurant. Now." Scrambling, fumbling with their purses and jackets, Isabella and her entourage practically fell over each other in their haste to escape. They didn't dare make eye contact with anyone as they fled the dining room, a trail of humiliation following them out the door. The moment the door swung shut behind them, a spontaneous wave of applause broke out in the dining room. Diners who had watched the entire ordeal clapped not loudly, but with a palpable sense of relief and justice. Mrs. Davies was beaming, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. The room slowly returned to its normal hum, but the atmosphere had changed. It was lighter, warmer. Catherine turned to the remaining staff who were watching in awe. To the entire staff she announced, her voice clear and strong. "Let this be a lesson. Your dignity is not part of the price of a meal. You will always have my full support when you are treated with disrespect. This will not happen again." Finally she turned to Maya, whose tears had subsided, replaced by a look of profound, overwhelming shock and gratitude. She was still trembling, but for an entirely different reason. Catherine's stern facade melted away, completely replaced by a kind, almost maternal smile. "Maya," she said softly, "you endured that with a strength I could not have imagined. You passed a test tonight, but not the one Ms. Croft was giving you. You passed mine. You've proven you have the fortitude and grace to handle the pressures of running a business." She reached into her purse and pulled out a simple business card. "Take the weekend off. You've earned it. Then on Monday morning, I want you to call the number on this card. It's my direct line. We're not going to talk about your business plan anymore. We're going to start executing it." She paused, her blue eyes twinkling. "How does the Sunrise Brew, a Blackwood hospitality partnership, sound to you?" For the first time all night, Maya's tears were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Through the blur, she saw not just the owner of a restaurant, but the architect of her future. Her dream, the one she thought was a lifetime away, was suddenly miraculously within her grasp. 6 months later, the bitter memory of that night at Aurelia felt like a scene from someone else's life. The scent of roasted coffee beans and fresh-baked cinnamon rolls had replaced the aroma of truffle oil. The warm, cheerful chatter of students, artists, and neighborhood locals had replaced the hushed, self-important whispers of Manhattan's elite. Maya stood behind the counter of the Sunrise Brew, a contented smile on her face as she frothed milk for a latte. The cafe was everything she had ever dreamed of, and more. Sunlight streamed through the large front windows, illuminating the reclaimed wood tables and mismatched, comfortable armchairs she had sourced from local antique shops. The walls were lined with bookshelves, encouraging patrons to linger. A local artist's vibrant paintings were on display, the exhibit changing every month. It wasn't just a business, it was a community hub, a place of warmth and welcome. The partnership with Catherine Blackwood had been a whirlwind of activity. Catherine was true to her word, providing not just the seed money, but also her invaluable expertise. She guided Maya through lease negotiations, connected her with the best suppliers, and taught her the intricate dance of payroll and inventory management. But she never overstepped. She insisted Maya's vision remain pure. "This is your cafe, Maya," she had said on their first meeting. "My role is to give you the tools, not to tell you how to build the house." Maya had blossomed as an entrepreneur. The same attention to detail and empathy she had shown at Aurelia now defined her leadership. She knew her regulars by name, remembered their orders, and treated her small team of employees with the respect and protection she had so rarely received herself. She paid them well above minimum wage and fostered an environment of collaborative support. The story of what happened at Aurelia had become something of a quiet legend in the New York service industry. It had spread through whispers from the diners and staff who were there that night. Isabella Croft had indeed faced repercussions. A week after the incident, a small damaging article appeared in a prominent business journal citing anonymous sources who described her erratic and abusive public behavior. It didn't mention the specifics, but it didn't have to. Her company's stock took a noticeable dip, and rumors swirled that her board had put her on a very short leash, insisting she attend anger management therapy. She issued a vague public apology for a moment of regrettable stress and faded from the society pages. Justice had been served not with a bang, but with the quiet, inexorable turning of the wheels of consequence. A bell above the door chimed, and Maya looked up, her smile widening. Catherine Blackwood walked in, dressed not in a power suit, but in a comfortable sweater and jeans. She had become a regular stopping by at least twice a week. She never asked for special treatment, always waiting in line with the other customers and finding a quiet corner to read her tablet. Catherine Maya greeted her warmly. "The usual you know it, Maya," Catherine said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. She looked around the bustling cafe with a deep sense of pride. "You've built something truly special here. I had a great mentor." Maya replied, her voice thick with gratitude. She handed Catherine her black Americano. "It's on the house, as always." Catherine dropped a $10 bill into the tip jar. "Nonsense. I'm a paying customer." She took a sip of her coffee. "Perfect. Every time." She settled into her favorite armchair by the window, and Maya watched her for a moment. She thought back to the woman she had been 6 months ago, tired, stressed, and on the verge of giving up. The starched white apron she had worn at Aurelia felt like a costume from a past life. Here in her own cafe, wearing a simple black t-shirt with the logo of the Sunrise Brew, she felt more herself than she ever had. The weight was finally gone from her shoulders. It had been replaced not by the burden of ownership, but by the lightness of a dream fulfilled. She had learned that a person's worth is not defined by the uniform they wear or the station they hold, but by the integrity they carry within. And sometimes, in the most unexpected of moments, in the face of the cruelest injustice, help arrives from the one person you'd least expect, proving that kindness and character are the true currencies of power. The sun was streaming through the window, and for Maya Collins, it truly was a new day. 2 years had passed, and the Sunrise Brew was no longer just a cafe. It was the heartbeat of its Brooklyn neighborhood. The initial glow of a dream fulfilled had settled into the steady, warm thrum of a beloved institution. Maya Collins moved with a newfound confidence that had been forged in the fires of entrepreneurship. The tentative young woman who once navigated the treacherous floors of Aurelia was gone, replaced by a savvy, respected business owner who greeted the local city council member and the struggling art student with the same genuine warmth. She had expanded, taking over the lease of the small shop next door to create a quiet reading nook, and had started a small mentorship program of her own, offering guidance to other young women hoping to start their own businesses. Her partnership with Catherine Blackwood had evolved from mentorship into a deep, abiding friendship. The past seemed like a distant country, yet echoes have a way of returning, often when least expected. The first sign of a new storm appeared not with a bang, but with the groan of construction equipment. Directly across the street, the old family-owned hardware store that had been a neighborhood fixture for 50 years was unceremoniously gutted. A sleek corporate banner soon went up, emblazoned with a logo that made Maya's stomach clench. Apex Coffee. Peak perfection in every cup. Apex was a soulless corporate behemoth, known for its aggressive expansion tactics, mediocre coffee, and a strategy of undercutting local shops until they bled out, then raising their prices once the competition was gone. Their arrival was a declaration of war. Her staff saw the worry etched on her face. "We'll be okay." Maya said Ben, her first hire, now her trusted manager. "They sell coffee. We sell a community." Maya appreciated the sentiment, but she knew it wasn't that simple. Apex had a multi-million-dollar marketing budget and the ability to operate at a loss for years if necessary. She felt a familiar chill, the old fear of losing everything she had worked so tirelessly to build. That evening, she sat with Catherine in the empty cafe, the garish lights of the Apex construction site casting long shadows across their table. "This is the next test, Maya Catherine," said, her voice calm as she swirled the last of her herbal tea in its cup. "Every successful business faces an existential threat. It's what forces you to innovate, to remember precisely who you are and why you matter." "I'm scared," Catherine Maya admitted the words feeling foreign after 2 years of self-reliance. "They can sell a latte for $1 less than it costs me to make one. How do I fight that?" Catherine leaned forward, her gaze intense. "When I was starting my first hotel, a massive international chain began construction on a mega resort right next door. They promised bigger rooms, more pools, everything was more. My investors panicked. They told me to sell." "What did you do?" Maya asked, captivated. "I stopped trying to be bigger. I focused on being better. They offered 1,000 generic rooms. I offered 100 unique experiences. They had 12 restaurants. I had one chef who knew every returning guest's favorite dish. They sold luxury. I sold a home. They went bankrupt in 5 years. You don't fight a giant on his terms, Maya. You create a battlefield he doesn't understand." Inspired, Maya began to fight back, but she needed to understand her enemy. She called a contact she'd made, a freelance journalist named David Chen, who frequented the cafe. She asked him if he could do some digging into the franchise ownership of this specific Apex location. It felt personal, too targeted. David, who loved a good David and Goliath story, eagerly agreed. A week later, he sat across from Maya, a grim look on his face. He pushed a tablet across the table. On the screen was a complex flowchart of shell corporations and holding companies. "It's buried deep," David said, pointing to a name at the top of the chain, a parent investment group called Nemesis Capital. It took some serious digging to find the primary stakeholder. The records are mostly sealed. He tapped the final box on the chart. "But I found a name in a public filing from 6 months ago." Maya leaned in to read the name. Isabella Croft. The air left her lungs. It was a punch to the gut, a ghost from the past rising with a vengeance. This wasn't just business. This was a calculated, vindictive attack. Isabella hadn't just moved on. She had festered. Unable to crush Maya's spirit, she had returned to try and crush her dream with the only tool she had: money. The knowledge was terrifying, but it was also clarifying. The fear vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. She showed the findings to Catherine, whose face hardened into a mask of cold fury. "I should have known her brand of poison was the kind that lingers," Catherine said, her voice low. The woman is a walking testament to the fact that you can't buy class or a soul. She looked at Maya. My offer to make a few calls still stands. I can end this for you. Maya looked out the window at her cafe, at the people laughing and talking at the life she had built. She shook her head. No. You taught me how to build a house, Catherine. Now I need to learn how to defend it myself. I can't let her have the satisfaction of knowing she scared me into hiding behind you. A slow, proud smile spread across Catherine's face. That's my girl. So what's the plan? Maya's plan was simple. She would not fight a war of attrition. She would start a revolution of connection. She launched a campaign called Our Brew, Our Block. She partnered with every small business on the street. The bookstore offered a 10% discount with a sunrise brew receipt. The bakery created a special sunrise muffin, and the local theatre promoted her cafe on their playbills. She started a pay-it-forward board where customers could buy a coffee for a neighbour in need. She hosted free workshops, open mic nights, and a weekly story time for kids that drew families from all over the borough. She didn't just sell coffee. She wove the fabric of her community tighter. The grand opening of Apex Coffee was an exercise in corporate sterility. They had sleek chrome counters, bored-looking employees in branded visors and loud pop music. They offered free coffee all day. Yet a line snaked out the door of the Sunrise Brew. Locals made a point of walking past the shiny new chain to buy their coffee from Maya, holding their cups up like small flags of defiance. The battle lasted for a month. Apex was a ghost town, while the Sunrise Brew was more vibrant than ever. The financial strain on Maya was immense, but her community's support was unwavering. One crisp autumn morning, Isabella Croft herself appeared. She didn't come to the cafe, but stood across the street, a dark, solitary figure in a severe trench coat, watching the joyful chaos of Maya's business. She watched as Maya hugged an elderly regular, as a group of students laughed on the patio, as Ben handed a free coffee from the pay-it-forward board to a homeless man. Isabella's face was unreadable, but for a moment Maya thought she saw not just anger, but a profound and desolate emptiness. Isabella had all the money in the world, but she couldn't buy a single ounce of the genuine connection she was witnessing. After 10 minutes, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the back of a waiting black car. 2 days later, Catherine sat with Maya holding a copy of the Wall Street Journal. On the front of the business section was an article by David Chen. The headline read, "Sour Brew, How Vindictive Investing," by tech CEO Isabella Croft, led to a PR nightmare for the Apex coffee conglomerate. The story, citing impeccable sources, laid out the entire petty vendetta. It framed Apex not as a business, but as a bully's weapon. The corporate backlash was immediate and severe. By noon, Apex's parent company had issued a statement announcing they were severing all ties with Nemesis Capital and would be closing the underperforming Brooklyn location, immediately citing a commitment to positive community engagement. Isabella's final desperate attempt at revenge had not only failed, it had spectacularly backfired, costing her millions and cementing her reputation as a corporate pariah. That afternoon, Maya and Catherine sat in their usual chairs, watching as movers began emptying the Apex coffee store. The street felt lighter, the air cleaner. "You didn't just defend your house." Maya Catherine said, her voice filled with a quiet, fierce pride. "You built a fortress, not with walls, but with people. That's a legacy Isabella Croft, with all her billions, will never understand." Maya looked at the reflection in her window, the bustling cafe, the loyal customers, the steadfast friend beside her. The echo of the past had finally faded, not into silence, but into the triumphant, joyful noise of her present. And there you have it, A story that proves that true wealth isn't measured in dollars but in dignity. Maya's story is a powerful reminder that you should never judge someone by their job or their uniform, because you never know the strength, the ambition, and the powerful connections they might be hiding. The Isabella Crofts of the world may have money, but it's the people with character like Maya and Catherine who truly own their future. What did you think of Isabella's ultimate downfall? Was it satisfying? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story moved, you please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs a reminder that good things happen to good people. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story of justice, triumph, and unexpected twists. Thank you for listening.